Warm welcome to the webinar Used but Not Used Up. Sorry, microphone. A warm welcome to the webinar Used but Not Used Up. It is very nice to have so many people with us today on this webinar, both here in person and in the stream. This is a dissemination seminar under the Wasted Textiles project, which is a research project at SIFO Oslo Met, which is funded by the Norwegian Research Council and the Norwegian Retailers Environmental Fund, and with user funding from, among others, Avfall Norge. And my name is Jens Måge. I am advisor at Avfall Norge, the National Waste Association of Norway, and I'm chair of the steering committee at Wasted Textiles. So also thanks to everyone that has contributed to this very important project and is contributing here today. And thanks to all of you for coming and joining this webinar in person or by stream. So today's topic, what do we know about discarded textiles? What are the facts when we start digging into the piles of used textiles? I hope that we all will be a bit wiser after today. That is our goal. So with these words, I will hand over the microphone to Ingunn Grimstad Klepp, a professor in clothing and sustainability and project manager for Wasted Textiles. The microphone is yours.
And good morning, everybody. Yes, I will warm up before we really dig into the waste. I will present for you one of the reasons why it might be important to dig in the waste. Do you have...
Forgot to change the...
You should press straight. Yes. So what I will talk about is not analysis of waste. I will talk about another report that was published at SIFO this autumn, and it is called The Plastic Elephant. The elephant in the room is often mentioned when we don't talk about growth. And we think that this elephant is more and more made up of plastic. And the plastic elephant we are going to talk about today is both a real thing. It's all this clothing that is not wanted, and it is a report. So who dare to talk about the plastic elephant? Last week, we had a seminar at Oslo Met in another project called Lasting, and I explained some of the research behind some of the things I will say today at that seminar. So if you are interested, you can also shortly listen to that seminar as a stream at our website. Here is the report I'm going to talk about, and I am not the only author. We have Lisbeth Berg and Anna Sigard and Tone, and also a German student called Lea that also took the photograph of one of many plastic elephants around us. The reason why we made this is exactly the same as the reason why we have the Wasted Textile project. It is the growth in the use of textile fibers, very often illustrated by something in this direction, with the natural fiber being more or less stable, and the growth is in use of plastic materials, the synthetic fibers. When we talk about overproduction and growth, this is visible all through the value chain as goods that aren't sold, as goods that are sold but not used, and goods that are discarded long before they are used up, as many of the other speakers will talk about today. So in our view, this plastification is a reason why the overproduction is possible. And that is because we don't have more natural fibers. So to fight overproduction and plastification is actually more or less the same thing, but it isn't necessarily done through the same means. It is a very important assumption that is in the field we are working in, sustainable fashion or clothing and sustainability. And that is that reuse, shared use, durability, repair, and so on affect product volumes. This is what I talked about last week. This is an assumption that we don't have much research backing up. On the other hand, we assume that it is another connection, and that if we reduce volumes, it will be necessary to use longer, share more, repair more, and so on. This is the reason why we think that to talk about quantities are more efficient than talking about these business models, because the one doesn't lead to the other, but the other lead to the one. More details about that in this other speech. With this in our mind, we have entered into different strategies for change in the clothing and textile sector. And we have divided these strategies in 3 different groups. That is policy document, and the most important of them is the EU strategy, because that will have most impact on Norwegian policy and Norwegian consumers as well. And then we have industry organizations. They are often quite wealthy and global and very well organized. And then we have brands and businesses. 3 of them we have looked upon that are also having their own strategies towards sustainability. So I will talk briefly about the results when we have read these strategies with some questions in mind. And the first question is whether the strategies include or address growth, overproduction or volumes in the problem statement. And as you see, the public policy makers, they do this to a degree of 70%. That is 2 that is do it clearly, and 3 that also do it partly. When we look at the industry organizations and brands and businesses, this is less clear, and 0 for brand and businesses. And of course, this is not so difficult to understand. Brands want to sell more, and to talk about more as a problem is, of course, difficult from a brand perspective. So it is more a question why not all these are talking about it than none of these. So it is a different kind of starting point. But as we know, when we talk about a problem, very often you start talking about the big problem. And this is not only in strategies, this is also in speeches and in newspapers everywhere. You first say this is a big problem, and then afterwards you talk about how to deal with it. And very often this problem is also talked about with a lot of numbers, and often, numbers that doesn't have anything to do with reality to do, but are just repeated. Yes, the next question we ask is whether this problem of growth are addressed through measures. Talking about what to do with it. Is it suggestions how this problem can be handled? And yes, again, we see that the policy makers are doing this partly. That means indirectly 4 of them does, and 1 do it clearly. And the one that does it clearly is not the EU strategy, unfortunately. It is a Danish one. The industry organizations, they don't deal with this at all, but the brand and businesses talk about this partly. These themes are how they talk about it. So in the report, we not only say whether they do or not, but we also write about how they talk about it, if they talk about it, and actually also how they not talk about it when they don't talk about it, how close they talk about it, you can say. Often it is, for instance, said that this is about consumption and not production. And that is interesting because consumption is also, is of course, more easy to blame in a way, instead of talking about how much is produced. It's talked about durable products, circular products, and material efficiency, mostly. The next question is whether, isn't it 4, 2? Yes. Then we have the next question, and that is whether or not the strategies have attempt to reduce plastification, meaning that less products are made of plastic. And this is rather sad, I will say, that none of them do that directly. None of them have goals that, or means to do this, and only some of the policy makers do this indirectly, none of them clearly, and none of the industry organizations or brands that we have looked upon. Thinking that plastification is also agreed upon as a problem in our society, this is rather astonishing, I will say, in the textile sector. Also reminding you that the growth is a plastic growth, and that the pressure to use more of the oil and gas in products like textiles are growing when the transport sector is going down. It is also a push from the other side to find new products for the oil and gas industry. Yes. When we look at the plastic waste problem, the results is a bit more positive. Many of them address this, also the brands, and many also of the industry organizations. But very often the plastic waste problems are addressed through, for instance, filters in washing machine, which is very small part of the plastic problem from the sector. It's like you are, discussing something that has the potential to reduce, yes, of course, but very little of the plastic production waste problem. Also, the most clear one is actually export restrictions. I mean, as long as we export clothing of synthetic fiber, they will become microplastic where they end up. If not, the country has waste treatment that take care of this. Breaking down on beaches and in deserts or anywhere will become plastic in the end, plastic waste, microplastic. So this is also a problem, that this way of doing it is the small thing, not the big question. Yes. Looking more specifically at the EU strategy, they want to focus on material durability, and by like the goal is by 2030 the textile product placed on the EU market are long-lived and recyclable to a great extent made of recycled fibers. And the sad thing is that all these things that they want to do is actually supporting plastification. And we know that they don't know that, or they didn't think about it. The thing is that durable products in textiles are plastic, much more durable than natural fibers. You know that with socks, warm socks is in wool, but then we put nylon in to make them stronger. It is easy if you think about it. Weight support also plastic. For instance, making an EPR on weight will support plastic because it's lighter. Recyclability actually also might support plastic because recycled polyester is what is available at the market, and natural fibers don't will not become the same. You can't recycled cotton isn't cotton, it is a viscose. It is another fiber. And you can't recycle silk to a new silk dress, I can assure you. And we have, so it changes the properties of the fibers. So this long-lived, this strategy, without really wanting it, actually support plastic, and through that also support plastification and the elephant, because plastic is necessary for the growth. This is from Avfall Norge, and it is the Avfall-pyramiden. What is the name in English? Waste hierarchy. The funny thing with this figure is that everybody knows it, and everybody agree that it is true. Like, it is always said to be what we are using. The most efficient way of reducing environmental impact in the waste area is to prevent waste becoming waste. And that is where we have most to gain by putting effort. On the other hand, it is very seldom that it is done in practice. And we are looking at the plastic elephant as a way of discussing whether waste prevention is taken into account, I would say that this is more or less the same. Talking about reduction is to reduce waste. So how come that the most efficient way of reducing environmental impact aren't really taken into account when we are developing regulation in a new field? I think this is an interesting question, and we should start to talk about this. This is agreed upon that the waste hierarchy works. But if you look at the details, you will find that waste prevention is taken out of the policy measures. In Wasted Textiles, we saw it was necessary to not only say this, but also say that it is possible to work with waste prevention. It is possible to work with political measures that actually want to reduce quantity, and of course also want to reduce specification. And we called this targeted produce responsibility, targeted toward reducing waste or reducing quantities. And it was developed as an EPR way of modulate the fee in the EPR system, but it could also be used in all other many other political measures. The thing is that we are standing, today we are standing here, where the clothes or the other textiles are collected. And today, a lot of analysis of waste are done, not only in Norway, which we will learn more about later, but also in other European countries. These analyses standing here, they are done to understand the downstream, the way that the waste can be used, recycled, reused, exported or not, these questions. But we, in the Wasted Textile Group, we say that we can use the same analysis looking the other direction, looking at waste to understand how it is used, how much it is, what is not used, and why. This is an upstream understanding of using the textiles to understand upstream questions. We can use this in a TPR scheme, but we can also use it in LCAs, or we can use it in eco-modulation for other reasons. Also in other kind of policy measures. So today we will hear, of course, a lot of analysis of waste that is done partly to understand downstream questions, but especially we think it is important at the same time, in the same analysis, talking about the upstream, because then we might get information that is possible to use to develop good regulation that actually are attacking the main problem, the growth, and by that doing waste prevention. Yes, I think it is my last slide. We have at our website, Clothing Research Norway, different policy papers explaining these TPR more in detail. And we have also a presentation of it from others than me, more in detail. And of course, you can download the report, the plastic elephant, if you like to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingunn. Then we will hear from more from in detail from the Wasted Textile project and the waste analysis that has been done in this project. And on the stage we have Frode Syvertsen, CEO of MEPEX, and Christiane Rabben, who is advisor consultant in MEPEX. And Frode, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Jens. Good morning, everyone. And I have the pleasure to have a short introduction before my colleague Christiane take the main presentation. I'm the kind of project leader of the working package 2, that's dealing about quantities and qualities. And we have really made a lot of analysis the last 2 years. We have dived into the streams to see both in the residual waste and in collection boxes to really get more information about what we threw away. So today we have the pleasure to present the first kind of complete results from the work. And the report will soon be published, this part of this work. And so I used the opportunity to send great thanks to all that have made it possible, the great cooperation with SIFO and the staff, and also the municipalities has been taking part in Roaf and Vesar and Oslo municipality with has all been very helpful in to perform this analysis. And also UF and Fretex that has been helpful to get, so we have the material to perform the analysis. So I think Christiane will take us through the results and the methodology we have used. And so Christiane, please.
The goal of Wasted Textile is to increase knowledge about synthetic fibers and help to reduce the amount of wasted textiles. And I'm here today to present a report that responds to research question 2. How much textiles, especially synthetics, are wasted in Norway? And to answer this question, SIFO and MEPEX has collaborated on a strategy for the textile analysis in the Wasted Textile project. And through the next minutes, I will get you through this agenda: sources and streams, development of method, results, and key findings. SIFO and MEPEX, we have done a lot of analysis on these 3 streams of textiles. One is residual waste bring scheme. This is waste that you bring to the recycling station. And then 2 is residual waste collection scheme, which contains waste that you put in your waste bin outside your home. And 3, this is textiles which you bring to the textile collection boxes. And for developing the method, we have combined SIFO's experience with textile and wardrobe studies, with MEPEX experience with waste streams and waste picking analysis. We have also been going through a lot of relevant literature, such as Nynne Nørup's method. And Fretex have given the project group an introduction to their method for assessing sales value on used textiles. And there have also been some practical testing earlier on. So based on this, our experiences and knowledge, we have developed several categories to structure our analysis by. So when we have a huge amount of textiles in front of us, sometimes we have borrowed it from the collectors, or we have handpicked it from the residual waste. We start to separate them in 25 different categories. And then we have each category, and we divide them in intervals of 10 or 0 and 100 based on the share of synthetic fibers. And how we define the amount of synthetic fibers, we do this by reading on the care label or the print on the textile. And yes, and we separate into the intervals of, as I said, tens. So, but sometimes we see that the text on the washing label has been removed or been washed away, so it's not readable. It's not possible for us to read the content. Then we have to register this as a separate thing, and then we also have to estimate how much synthetic fibers can we have here. And then we do this based on our own knowledge. We study the textile, and we sometimes do online searches and grade it in the amount of synthetic fibers. And at the end, we do a visual assessment of condition, and this we do by looking at the textile, looking for absence of wear and tear, stains, and defects. Yes. We also use 3 different levels of condition. Number 1 is as good as new. 2 is good enough, potential for more use. And 3 is not usable. So when I will present the results for you later now, I will merge 1 and 2 into usable textiles, and 3 still not usable. So you now have a little background information. I think you can be ready for the results. So first I will present results about categories and material streams. And this shows us the distribution of main categories for each material stream. If we start by looking at the column to the left, we have the collection boxes. As you can see, this has a high amount of clothing and accessories. There was supposed to be a turquoise square here, and an orange square here, and red for textile non-clothing. So for the content of the collection boxes, we see it's a small share of shoes, only 6%, and it's also a little bit textile and non-clothing, less than 20%. So if we look at the residual waste bring stream all the way over here, we see that the biggest part is the textile non-clothing. And for both the residual waste streams, the share of shoes are even. It's about 15%. Here we not only see per stream, but also as a weighted average of all the textiles that the consumer gets rid of every year. And if you look at the subcategory household, we can see this is the highest part, highest amount of 21%, and sportswear and workwear has the smallest share in what type of products the consumer gets rid of. And now some synthetic fibers. This slide shows a lot, but I think we can focus on the columns to the right. For here we can see that, yes, it's like turquoise and orange and red. So we see that if we like look at the average of what kind of textiles the Norwegian consumer gets rid of every year, we see a percentage of 44 of synthetic fibers. We can also see that there's a higher amount of synthetic fibers in the collection boxes. More about synthetic fibers, but here I would like to compare the two main categories, clothing and accessories, with textile non-clothing. And clothing and accessories are the green columns, and textile non-clothing the reddish columns. So on the two ends, we see to the left clothing and accessories and textile non-clothing made without synthetic fibers. And to the right, we have the same categories made from 100% synthetic fibers. So for clothing and accessories, they have actually an equal share made from without synthetic fibers and with synthetic fibers. And in comparing to textile non-clothing, we can see that they have a share of more than 50% made without synthetic fibers. And also they have a high amount of products made from 100%, about 38%. So this were like 100 and 0, this is the monomaterials, and in the middle we have the mixed fibers. So for clothing and accessories in turquoise, we see it's more common to use mixed fibers than what it is for textile non-clothing. So this is about condition of the textiles for each stream. Residual waste is now to the left, and collection box you can see here. And we see that what type of products. No, so here, sorry, this is missing something, but usable textiles are turquoise, and not usable textiles, they are shown in orange. So for the collection boxes, we see they have a share of 81% of usable clothing. They only have 20% almost of non-usable clothings. But if we look at the residual waste streams, we can also see that they have a share of more than 60% usable clothes. So it's kind of a high amount of usable clothes that we get rid of every year. And as you might know, also, we are collecting less clothes here than what we throw away. So it's a huge amount of usable clothes that we throw away every year. This is also about synthetic fibers, but I will show it in combination with condition. And first here you can see the proportion of synthetic fibers for each category. From the bottom you see less than 20% for thin tops, and then it goes up and up. And non-clothing has the highest percentage of synthetic fibers, more than 85%. And if I click for the next slide, we see also the proportions of usable for each category. So I think this slide shows us that the amount of synthetic fibers does not has nothing to do with the how much of it that is usable. There. And the very last slide is about key findings, responding to the question, how much textiles, especially synthetics, are wasted in Norway? And we see that we throw away more textiles than we collect. About 49 tons ends up in residual waste every year, while 30,000 tons are collected by the collectors. we have a total share of 44% of synthetic fibers in the textiles that the consumer disposes of. And we see a distinct difference between the products in the residual waste streams and in the textile collection boxes. And also kind of shocking that 2/3 of all textiles in the residual waste are usables. So this was what I would like to say today. And if you have questions, you can send an email or contact us directly.
Thank you very much, Christiane. We will move straight on to the next speakers, and I'm happy to introduce our 4 master students. That this summer we had a very exciting project where we tested out the targeted producer responsibility system for picking analysis, which was mentioned by Ingunn. So we should have Sahid and Siri, Camilla and Eva with us on video. So I hope we'll see you soon on the screen. And I can also say that this project was also funded by the Norwegian Retailers Environmental Fund. So we are also very grateful that we were able to do this project. So here we are. I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Jens. We can start when we see our slides, maybe. Okay. Hello, everyone. As Jens introduced us, we are 4 students from different backgrounds, and this summer we tested out the targeted producer responsibility and see if it can effectively stop overproduction in the future. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce my team to you. Can you please go to the next slide? Yes, thank you. I'm Said, I'm 28 years old. I'm doing my second master in Information Systems Business Analytics at Høgskolen Kristiania.
And my name is Camilla. I'm 25 years old, and I study a master. I take the master in informatics, digital economics, and leadership at the University in Oslo.
And my name is Eva Hovda, and I study material science at NTNU, and I'm 24 years old.
And my name is Siri, and I'm studying economics at NTNU in Trondheim. So today we're going to introduce you to our project and what we did during the summer, and we will shortly get you through the methodology, and in the ending we will give you the findings and the analysis that we did, and to the very last point we will do some limitations and suggestions that we made up.
So during 6 weeks this summer, we did a data collection at Slemmestad, where we analyzed different discarded textiles from different waste streams. And during this process, we had a few research questions we had in mind. So these are some of them. So we were looking into to what extent it is to actually find out where the textiles were made, and the potential for reuse, how good quality and how much the textiles or garments have been used before they were thrown away. We also looked into automatic sorting according to implementation of AI, and also how much fiber, how easy it is to recycle. And then at the end, we actually looked into how long all this took to answer these questions. Yes.
So here is an overview of how we conducted the data collection. We started the day sorting textiles, and the first step of analyzing each item was to start registering information into the database. After that, we took a photo of each item, and the reason that we took photos was for seeing the potential in the AI for doing the analysis in the future. And then we weighted each item and sent it further to one of the 2 last stations to register the rest of the information into the database. And we finished all day uploading the photos to the cloud to keep them safe.
Yes, to see if this process can be automated, we wanted to use artificial intelligence or machine learning. And the way we do it was to use something called computer vision, which is basically a fancy word for taking pictures and seeing if a machine learning algorithm can sort them automatically. And to do this, we used an algorithm called convolutional neural networks. And we can look at the next slide now. And yes, and to do that, this was our data pipeline and our overall project and every step that we took. So the first step was introduction to the project. That was done in Avfall Norge. And we were introduced to some literature, and we started by reading them and seeing what has been done in the past. As Camilla said, we spent 4 weeks doing data collection at Samt, a facility that is doing waste management. And the next was to contact companies about our results and see if they have anything to add to the data. And also data cleaning, which is just going through the data, looking for typos and mistakes and fixing them. Then, based on our research questions, we did a visual analytics and a hypothesis testing and seeing if those questions can be answered by the data we collected. Next was data processing, or simply put, is to transform the data into the format that an AI algorithm can accept. Feature extraction, which features are important for us for the model, and lastly, model training and evaluation. On the last few days, we spent finalizing our results in a report and publishing the report.
So over to our findings. So during the 13 days we analyzed at Slemmestad, we actually did analyze over 3,000 items, which corresponds to 1 ton of textiles. And we did analyze textiles from 6 waste streams. So we had around 2,764 from TRV, which is Trondheim Renholdverk, that did do a pilot program according to collection of textiles here in Trondheim. We also did analyze a few garments from the residual waste and also the Mapex clothing swap. That was the smaller part of it. And then we also looked into where the textiles were from. So this is an overview of where the textiles were produced. So mostly was from China. A few garments were produced in Norway, but overall we do import 99% of all the clothing. Yeah.
We found that 80% of all the textiles that we analyzed had a care label, and only 4.24% of them were not readable. That is a good starting point in order to collect information from the items. In addition, 84.7% of all items was possible to trace back to the manufacturer. Here you have a photo of a Name It care label, which you consider as a good one, as it includes a lot of relevant information. But determining the age of a garment turned out to be more complicated than expected. There is no general requirement for production year to be present in the care labels. Hence, most brands do not include the production year in their care label. In our analysis, we found 95 out of 3,024 items that had production year represented clearly. That is something we consider a surprisingly low representation. Care labels do contain a lot of information, so the main challenge is to sort out which numbers actually represent the production year, or if the numbers actually are representing the production year at all. Many labels tend to be misleading, as with these examples you can see here. And because of the misleading labels, we decided to contact the companies in order to see if they had any systems in the labels that we could track the production year from. If not, we asked them to check the numbers on the labels in order to see if they could track their products in their systems. Even though there was some limitations for the way companies could help us, many of the companies we were in contact with were cooperative and helpful. At the right side of the table, you can see responses we got from the different companies.
So another thing we looked into was how old each garment was with the production year, as Camilla mentioned. So we actually did also guess on each item we analyzed, we guessed when it could be produced. So according to different trends or our knowledge of what was in or popular at some times, we tried to guess how old a garment was. So we only had 95 items that actually had a very visible collection year. And this is a distribution of how good our guesses were for these 95 different items, which we had a very good percentage as we did guess very correct. You can go to the next one, Camilla. But then again, we did have over 3,000 items and only 95 had the production year very visible. So we did guess on all the other ones too. And just to get like an overview of how old each item was, could we actually guess that the item was less than 10 years or 5 years or older than 10 years? So in this case, we did look into our guesses, and I think what we found out is that we are able to somewhat degree actually determine if a garment is older than 10 years or newer. In that way, we can actually look at what garments are maybe more fast fashion and what garments are actually been in people's wardrobe for a longer period of time. Yeah.
So during the process of analyzing the clothes, we used a condition scale to determine the conditions of the items. And this scale was developed by the PhD study done by Anna Skytterstad. And for each item that we evaluated, we gave a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is the perfect condition, basically brand new, and 1 is really bad condition or not usable. And when giving the item a usability rating, factors such as piling, stain, holes, wear and tear, and damages to buttons and zippers were considered. We actually found 21 items with the price tag on. And on the screen, you can see the distribution of the usability score. The average score that we found was 3.68, indicating a very good usability score. A fun thing we also noticed that we saw a subtle difference between the genders, where male discarded textile scores with a lower rating than females did.
So we also looked into the potential for recycling, and we thought about 3 parameters we wanted to include. So we looked into how much print there was on the t-shirts and if it was higher than 100 square centimeters. We also looked into multi-fiber garments, so how much is polyester, how much is cotton, and also multi-layer. So a jacket will have one inner layer, one outer layer, and probably a layer in between. So how many items of everything we analyzed had multi-layer. And this way we made an overview of how easy it could be to recycle these garments, where we do actually have about 28% that is pretty easy or easier to recycle. Yeah. We also did write down in an Excel sheet of how many different fibers we had for each item. And we actually did find that most of the items, about 35%, had only one fiber, so 100% cotton or 100% polyester. But we did actually find garments with over 5 different types of fibers. And here you can see the distribution of what our findings were. And also during the course of these 13 days at Slemmestad, we did note how many items and how many kilos we went through each day. So here you can see our efficiency going up the more we've learned what to look at in the labels and how fast we were working together.
So the fast TPR was a method that we developed to have a less time-consuming but still informative TPR. The method includes less input data. So in the process of collecting it, we didn't take in that much data or information from each item. But this makes it possible to implement this type of picking analysis on a larger scales, and thus affecting more of the textile industry. For the fast TPR, we registered items in a 30-minute time period. And as you can see on the screen, each row indicates one person conducting the analysis. The average number of items ended up being 29 during that period. And the weight during the time elapsed was on average 7.6 kilograms. The time or how many items we were able to analyze varied because we had larger items or smaller items such as underwear and baby clothes, and they take longer time to process or it's weighing less. So yeah.
Okay, back to automating the sorting. So we wanted to only show the potential, and we had very limited amount of technology at our hand, and also very limited amount of time. So the model that we developed took the picture of the garment as you can see on the right as the input, and the output would be what is this item, and here will be the case that it says it will be a jacket. How did we evaluate this model? We used something called a font score. And to simply explain a font score is just think about it as a picking blueberries. If you use one of these tools that you have in Norway, you'll get a lot of berries, but very low accuracy, and you might end up with having leaves and bad ones. But if you do it with hand, it'll be very slow and inefficient. And a font score is a mixture of those two things. So it'll be how efficient it is and how accurate it is. Can you go to the next one, please? Yes, and here you can see the overall F1 score. And after doing hyperparameter tuning, which is a very technical process to tune the model to what we are doing, we got an accuracy of 81% in average of all of the types of garment we try to feed the model and try to classify. Yes. So during our project, as like any other project, we had limitations as like working environment. It was in the summer, it was very hot. We had only 6 weeks of working on this project, so 4 weeks of data collection, 2 weeks of analysis and development. Technical limitations, all pictures were taken by hand, so the data was a bit noisy, and also we were tired. The care labels weren't standardized, so a lot of them didn't have the year of the production, which could be fixed in the future. Our suggestions is, first of all, and most of all, standardization of the care labels is very important. Please use your clothes before throwing them away more. Read the labels before buying. So try to maybe find garments that have more natural fibers, and buy from green brands.
So at the end, we would like to thank everyone that has been involved. We would really like to thank Jens Måke, Christiane Rabben, Ingunn Grimstad-Klepp, and Tone Skårdal Tobiassen for guidance throughout the project. We would also like to thank Anne Skytte-Skigård for inspiring us for the initial method, and also a thank to Asef Al-Alam for sharing valuable insights. You can go to the next one, Camilla. So thank you for your attention, and please check out our reports. You can scan the code here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva, Siri, Camilla, and Said, for your contribution. Very, very valuable insights that you provided for us this summer. So, by the way, there has been questions on whether we will share the presentations, and yes, we will, at least for those who are registered. But we can also publish it on the site of the event, and the video will also be out, so it will be accessible and shareable afterwards. Not recyclable, maybe recyclable too. Haha. Okay, so we move on to the next speaker. Now we'll hear from a project in the Netherlands, and Hilde van Duin. She is head of global value chains at Circle Economy Foundation, and with us on a video link, I hope. There you are.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, good to see you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'll also try to share my screen. Thank you so much for having me today. See? Yeah. Can you see it there? Yes, I think you can. Okay, yes. So my name is Hilde van Duin. I'm the head of global value chains at Circle Economy. Circle Economy is a foundation based out of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, but we operate on a global scale. We have been active on post-consumer textiles for quite a while now. Also me personally, I deep dived into literally the post-consumer textiles in 2018. I was the project manager for the fiber sort project on automated sorting of textiles. But I'm here to share some of our experiences on post-consumer textiles that we acquired through 2 other projects. So this is what I'm going to talk to you about. So the project Sorting for Circularity, which actually didn't focus on the Netherlands alone, but we did with Fashion for Good on 6 different European countries. We assessed the recyclability of textiles. So I'll give you a summary of our findings there. And then I'll go to another project, which I think also in the context of the presentation we just heard might be interesting. That was on the accuracy of composition claims on care labels. And I also briefly reflect on the brands that we found on these textiles that we analyzed. And then just briefly touch upon the label dilemma, as I would like to call it. So let me jump to Sorting for Circularity. Sorting for Circularity is a project that we started in 2020 together with Fashion for Good. With Fashion for Good, we scoped this project with the aim to do an evaluation and commercial assessment of textile waste across Europe. So we looked at the textiles that could not be sold on the secondhand markets and wanted to know what is their recyclability and what would also be the financial added value. Let's say that, so of course there could be a circular added value, but also the financial added value of redirecting these textiles from current destinations to recycling. You can imagine, if you know Fashion for Good, that this is relevant to them. They have an innovator program, and quite a lot of recycling technologies are part of the innovator program. So this also informs their innovator program. So what are the recycling technologies that would be required to tackle this growing mountain of non-rewearable textiles we are facing? We analyzed a total volume of 21 tons across 6 different countries. So in Germany, Poland, Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. We worked in parallel with Refashion to ensure that we use the same methodology. So our results are, in that sense, are quite comparable. We worked with big textile sorters because we really wanted to go to their facilities and then assess recyclability of their textiles using a near-infrared hand scanner, but really to base it on their assessment on the recyclability, on the rewearability of these textiles. So we really were at the end of their process. They already sorted the textiles for secondhand markets, and all those textiles that were not suitable for secondhand markets, those are the textiles that we analyzed. And this study was funded through Fashion for Good by many big fashion brands. And maybe just again to clarify, so what did we focus on? You can imagine in the room, maybe this is quite small to read, but if you, the most interesting part is on the right. We, together with the sorters, assess where do the textiles currently go to. So you have domestic reuse and export reuse together account for about 49% of the textiles that they sort. And then all the rest, so the remaining 51%, that is basically, those were the focus textiles for our study. Part of those textiles are currently still sold on secondhand markets, but where sorters already know that these are very low valued. So if we would increase collection there very quickly, those textiles would not have a demand on the secondhand market anymore. But also looked at textiles currently going to fiber recycling, which is not a lot, to the wipers industry, to downcycling, and a little bit to refurbishment and waste to energy, but that's really, really minor. So these are the textiles that we analyzed. Our aim was, as I mentioned, to assess the recyclability of post-consumer textiles, because we already knew that they didn't have a value on the secondhand market. That doesn't mean that they are not rewearable in that sense, like technically rewearable. Many of these textiles were perfectly fine, but this is really the assessment of a sorter that knows that these textiles do not meet the quality standards of their clients. And this is an overview of what we found in terms of the recyclability of post-consumer textiles. So in the darker green, you will see the textiles that are suitable to go to current technologies, so mechanical recycling, and also that have no disruptors at all. So there are no buttons, no zippers. You can just immediately send these textiles to a recycling. For instance, these could be especially sweaters and t-shirts where there's really no disruptor attached to it. In the lighter green are the textiles that are suitable for mechanical recycling, but hardware should be removed first. We did make a distinction between removable and non-removable hardware. So zippers and buttons you can remove also automatically with current technologies. But for instance, sequin, big prints, lyrics thread, these are all textiles that disruptors that we considered as non-rewearable. Non-removable, sorry. So those are not included in the light green. And then we also made another category on chemical recycling. This is, of course, based on projections of chemical recyclers of their feedstock specifications. And you will see those highlighted in purple. So you see that overall, in the future, there could be a big share of these non-rewearable textiles could be suitable for fiber-to-fiber recycling. We estimate that's about 74%. However, this is highly dependent on the scale and the exact feedstock specifications of chemical recycling technologies. So this overview made many people very happy. However, this is very much, let's say, a projection of what the future could look like, but it's not a given that these textiles can currently already be recycled. Also maybe on the mechanical recycling ones. So in theory, these textiles could be sent to mechanical recycling, but if a sorter does not sort based on fiber composition, of course, it will be very tricky to meet the feedstock specifications of mechanical recycling, because you need to add an additional step to your process to ensure that you know that all the textiles that you send to a mechanical recycler looking for cotton are actually also pure cotton. So as I mentioned, we used near-infrared technology to detect the fiber composition with handheld scanners. There are limitations to that technology, of course. So on the one hand, it did allow us to work quite quickly. So if I compare it to the productivity of the students working with the labels, of course, working with a hand scanner is way faster than looking for a label. However, there are, of course, limitations to the accuracy of near-infrared scanners, and especially the recognition of elastane is a problem. And I also therefore want to just briefly talk you through another project that we did in 2019, 2020. It was a project that we did for the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Waterways. And it was actually caused by concerns of sorters that expressed towards representatives of the ministry that the composition claims on care labels were not accurate. And how did they know that? Well, for instance, in Wormerveer in the Netherlands, there's a fiber sort, so there is an installation to recognize the composition of textiles, and they identified a gap between what the fiber sort said and what the label said. And the fiber sort had been calibrated with testing of the actual composition of textiles. So that was a concern that the Dutch Parliament wanted to take seriously. And the second part of this, the request for this project, was that they also they had an assumption that the fact that composition claims would not be reliable would be a hindrance for recycling. So that's also something that they wanted us to investigate. We also worked with students for this project. So we had a full week that we brought students from the Amsterdam Fashion Institute to Wormerveer, so to one of the textile sorters, where they looked at the composition claims on care labels of textiles that were already sorted by the sorter. So they were already classified as non-rewearable, and they were already scanned by the fiber sort. So we had a big bale, for instance, of pure cotton. We knew everything in there was pure cotton. And then we could read in the labels whether the labels actually said the same. And we did that for a variety of compositions, not only cotton, of course. And this was, let's say, the first part of our research question. So are composition claims on care labels of post-consumer textiles accurate? We had a sample of 10,901 garments. So that was 4 days of sorting with these students. And of course, we could only take into account those garments that had a label that we could read. So we had 7,454 items that in the end were included in our analysis. And we found that 41% of the labels were not accurate. So 41% of the labels had a composition claim that did not match what the fiber sort said. And this is already quite careful because I did take into account, let's say, the reliability of the fiber sort. So we already included margins and all the different sites. So this is a quite conservative estimate. And of course, which is maybe can be expected, we found that labels were most inaccurate when it came to blends. So as an example, so we did find that 34% of the labels claimed the right cotton content. However, more than 31% claimed the product contained at least 95% cotton. Well, in fact, it was less than 75%. So you see a big gap where the cotton content was overestimated. This immediately led also from the ministry to allegations of fraud. However, we also found extremely stupid fraud where the cotton content was underestimated. We also had quite a lot of interviews with suppliers and manufacturers and fashion brands. Of course, I mean, there can be fraud along the value chain. However, we also see this as yet another symptom of this very long, complex, and intransparent supply chain for textiles. You can find all the detailed information on our website. The report is, of course, public. And then I wanted to just briefly reflect on the brands that we found on the labels. So, as I said, we had a total sample size of 10,902 or 3 items. And then if you look at the different brands that we found over 3,000 brands. I must confess there are still some double counting in there. So I already excluded a lot of the double counting. But the big challenge here was that the students had to include the brand name manually. And believe me, you can write, for instance, H&M in many, many different ways. I found very, very creative ways of writing H&M. So that means that there's still quite some double counting, or brands, for instance, like CNA that have sub-brands like Kanda or like Clockhouse. So we did include already take out quite a lot of those double countings, but I'm pretty sure there are still more in there. We found that 16% didn't have a brand, so it was not recognized, it was not on there. We also found quite a lot of homemade products. And I think one of the reasons why we probably found quite a lot of homemade products is because those products do not really have a big value on the secondhand market. So also here, probably in a non-rewearable share, we'll just have found a lot more of those products because they will not be sold to the secondhand market. And we found that 17% of the items came from the 4 largest international fashion brands in the Netherlands. Not all international fashion brands, by the way. So just to mention, the top 4 was H&M, CNA, Primark, and Hema. Hema is a big warehouse store in the Netherlands, followed by Zara and Esprit. So those were the most common brands that we found. However, and I just included a few reflections here, it is, of course, important to then also take into account we didn't look at the production year. So we don't really know when these products were put on the market. So whether the fact that we found, for instance, a lot of H&M is a reflection of the fact that people dispose of H&M very quickly, or because of the fact that they are the store with the most stores. They are the fashion brand with the most stores in the Netherlands and the highest share of the fashion store square meters in the Netherlands. So that is an interesting addition that you would need to have to make, is to also then look at what are the volumes that all these brands put on the Dutch market, and how is that then reflected in an analysis like this? Because the fact that H&M is first is maybe not surprising, because they've been here for a very long time and they have a lot of stores here. Then, for instance, Primark, who actually came third in the analysis, is an interesting case, because whilst H&M has over 120 stores in the Netherlands, Primark has only had 20 stores in 2021. And still, they were number 3 in the analysis. So that also maybe is another interesting fact, and just adds to the big, I would say, gap in our analysis, is that we did not have the information on the production year. So we cannot assess whether these textiles were used for a long time or were not used for a very long time. Another interesting case is V&D. V&D was a big warehouse in the Netherlands. It also had quite a big textile collection. And it is number 24 on this list of 3,000 brands. So that's quite high. However, the last store of V&D closed in 2016. So that is also interesting, that there are still so many textiles coming from a store that is already bankrupt since 2016. And we still find quite a lot of these textiles in the post-consumer textile waste that we assessed. Maybe also to add, and it was also mentioned by the students, so we also found quite a lot of price tags still on these textiles, which is of course always sad to find, because these were all textiles that were already classified as non-resellable, so they will not be sold to the second-hand market. So these textiles have never been worn and are already became, say, textile waste in that sense. And then very briefly, the label dilemma. So as I said, a part of our research question was, does the lack of accuracy of labels hinder recycling of discarded garments? Because that is how this whole research started. They wanted to know whether the fact these labels are not accurate is actually could be a barrier to becoming more circular. And it's actually, we found a slightly different reality, because when you talk to recyclers, they do not say that the lack of accuracy of care labels is a hindrance to them, because they don't actually look at the care labels. It's just too time intensive. So they, for instance, either they use near infrared scanning, or they do more, let's say, the feeling tests and the burning tests. Also, for instance, with the recyclers in India, that is what they mostly use. However, they do see the label itself as a big disruptor for their recycling process, especially, of course, for mechanical recyclers. So in 33% of the garments, the label was the only contaminant. So it would be ready for recycling in that sense, let alone the composition, but the label was the only thing on there that made that product not being uniform. And we found that 63% of the garments that were really ready for recycling, so they only had removal disruptors, they had a composition that is suitable for recycling. However, the label was the only hindrance to recycling. And this is, of course, very interesting, because we do need to have this information on product level. And I think especially with the upcoming legislations, but also within, for instance, if you would look at targeted producer responsibility, which we are a strong believer of, it does leave us with this label dilemma, because you do want to find a way to ensure that you track the information and it is somehow connected to a garment. However, it does create this new headache, you could say, for recyclers themselves. So this is in the end what we advised the Dutch ministry. So we really also, in the context of the digital product passports, we really advised them to look also at more innovative ways to ensure that information is connected to garments, and also to take the end of use phase into account when designing the most suitable technical way to attach the information to individual items. And this was it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this morning. And as I mentioned, all our information sources can also be found on our website.
Thank you, Hilde. Thank you very much. So we will take a short break now. A bit different from what's in the program, but we are a bit over time, but that's fine. We'll have 5 minutes break. And there will be 2 last presentations, one from Svalbard, picking analysis, and one about the EPR system, how it can be done in an environmental way. So please be back in 5 minutes, 10:20. Okay. Welcome back to the webinar. I'm happy to introduce the next speaker, which is who is Henrik Lystad, CEO of Norwaste. Please, Henrik.
Yes, hello everybody. Standing here in front of you, and this time to show you more of kind of a curiosity than following up of this very good research and good results that were presented earlier today. So this is about some results from a waste characterization done at Svalbard, and please excuse me for the Norwegian text I forgot. Okay, Norwaste is a new, still the new consultancy based here in Oslo. We were founded in 2019, and I see that we have to change the slide because we are filling up with pictures all over here, so we have to find another way to do that. Since 1 or 2 years, we have done waste characterizations. So we are not the biggest player in waste characterization in Norway, but a challenger, if you may say so. Svalbard, it's a curiosity. You know, it is. I think there is a little more than 3,000 people inhabitants on Svalbard. It's part of the Kingdom of Norway, but with several exceptions. One of the exceptions is that regulation, ordinary regulation, does not apply to Svalbard directly. So, for instance, there is no producer responsibility at Svalbard. But you do have the waste law. The waste law applies at Svalbard. And to do this short. Responsible for waste treatment or waste collection and treatment as well is the so-called Longyearbyen Lokalstyre, which is similar to a municipality. Sorting takes place in public containers available for all inhabitants, so you don't have anything in your home, but you have it outside. And due to the polar bears, these things have to be tight, right? We can imagine what if not. So this is what is collected at house. Then they have here's a picture of one of those containers, and this is one of the reasons. So here you have glass and metal box cans, which is then the opposite to the deposit scheme we have in the mainland in Norway. No deposit on Svalbard. So they collect glass bottles and drinking containers in cans and have a fairly high collection rate. So it works, which is possibly an argument against the deposit scheme, but I don't want to go into that now. The other solution is the recycling station, the miljøstasjonen, which is a quite new building. And here this is sorting guide for what you can deliver here. Of course, textiles is part of it. The emphasis that it is for reuse and not waste textiles, as all municipalities in Norway will have to apply for in a few years. This is a picture of as it was brand new, so there was not so much in the reuse department here, but I think that has filled up quite clear in the meanwhile. The used articles for reuse are given away in this tiny little shop with which is completely overloaded with items and very small opening hours, operated by local students, and you get everything for free. So you would think that you would find or kind of a high turnover for usable items like textiles. Okay, so the waste characterization we did this summer in June was based on the guidelines from Avfall Norge from 2015. Okay, the aim was to form a basis for a new waste plan that they want to renew up there. So three samples, main samples were taken, like those containers you saw, from 3 different areas, representative for different kind of people. And the characterization was done with the project manager from Norway and people from the local municipality or lokalstyre. Sorting protocol level 2 with some modifications, and in total 788 kilos were sorted. I go directly to the results, and for us, these figures were quite surprising. As much in one of the container, we found like 17% of textiles in the residual waste, which is a lot. Yeah, you will all agree. So there was a difference in the other containers. We call them here student flats, children families, and more established households. You need to know that Svalbard or Longyearbyen is a society where people come, and there's a high turnover of people. They often stay there for like 1 year or something like that, or even shorter. So this is just some snapshots of what we found. I think headline is that these were very usable and very good looking or reusable clothes. I think coming back to the categories earlier, I think that would be high on the level, on the scale, higher than normally. Okay, so one of some possible explanations for this high fraction of textiles. Just I haven't put it in here, but they have 99 kilos per residual waste per inhabitant, so 11% would mean like 11 kilos. Still quite a substantial amount. Possible explanations: students. There's a high level of turnovers, and I think the student category, it often looked like people would like move away from Svalbard and then just get rid of the surplus luggage. Knowledge about sorting, availability of the containers, because you had to go either to this recycling station, which was quite far away, or to this Brukt, and possibly also attitudes. Thank you. Maybe those people that are interested in going in the Arctic circles, they tend to say, they claim to say that they do it out of care for the environment, but when it comes to these kind of attitudes, maybe they're more into other things than good sorting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Thank you for this insight into a small island society, Svalbard. So last speaker is Dina Lingås, consultant at Norion Consult in Denmark, Copenhagen, I believe. And you are with us on a video link. And I will give the floor to you. You will speak about how can a producer responsibility scheme be set up to reduce environmental impact. Thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Let's see if I can remember what we did in the morning. I believe I clicked present. No? Yes.
We don't see it in full screen. Maybe there or
there.
Now it's good.
Perfect. Okay, no, but hello everyone. My name is Dina Lingås, and I am Norwegian, but I live in Copenhagen and has done for the last 6-7 years. I'm looking at the time, and I'll try to be a bit speedy. That's that's always a challenge of being the last speaker, unfortunately. But so you also get to have some questions. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how an extended producer responsibility scheme can reduce the climate impact from textiles. And this is based on this study that was done in the spring together with Norges, where we analyzed the material flow of textiles in Norway. Let me see if I can go to the next. No. Oops. I'll quickly go through the background before presenting the material flow that we did, and then go into suggestions for an EPR for textiles based on this analysis. So the research was commissioned by Virke, who was leading the working group to set aside to establish a proposal for an EPR for textiles. So the research that we did was 1 out of 3 basic reports or background reports. And our task was to identify the material flow for 2022, also assessing the environmental impact of textiles, as well as the potential data source. So because of the whole aspect of data source and what kind of data can you use to calculate the fee in an APR scheme, the recommendations from the report were split in 2 based on what is most fair and what can be done. What can be done today, what is feasible today versus what should be the optimal EPR in terms of environmental impact. For today, I'm going to focus on the last part, as the possibilities should not necessarily be dependent by the available data base. Very shortly, what we found was that, so we looked at both data from the tax registry, Tolltariffen, where all the imports and exports are registered. We also looked at production data on local production and Comtrade for international trade data. And we both looked at items that are fully textile items, meaning more than 80% textiles, but we also looked at products which might contain textiles, such as sofas and chairs and other kind of home items. And you can see the material flow on the screen here, and you can see in the corners there are like these color codes showing the reliability of the different data sources. So as you can see, there are some red and some orange ones, meaning that the data is not necessarily 100% accurate, but it should still be giving a fairly good picture of the material flow in Norway. So as was mentioned earlier, we have very little production of textiles in Norway, only 1,084 tons. We import a lot, so 105,000 tons, and then we export a tiny bit as well. There is one big question here, and that is that all the online shopping, so when people order things online for less than 350 kroners, this is not registered. And with the current prices of textiles, we can assume that this can actually be quite a lot of textiles kind of going under the radar. Then 80,565 tons were wasted, and as Mapex also showed, most of it ends up in the general waste. So we found around 50,922 in general waste and only 29,643 ending up or being separately collected. Of everything that was separately collected, a minuscule amount was actually reused in Norway, and 31,642 tons were exported for reuse outside of Norway. In addition, so coming back to the main numbers, we import 105,429 tons. And this is only looking at textiles where products where the majority are textiles. Looking at products which might contain textiles, that's an additional 55,490 tons of products. So in all, like those items we are not sure the proportion of textiles, but we are looking at a potentially large additional amount. And then
We try to analyze the product categories based on the text registry. That is quite difficult. It is not a registry that is very modern and very easy to analyze on. But all in all, the majority of the products were clothes, and the biggest category is suits, blazers, trousers, shorts, dresses, and skirts. But this, of course, makes quite a lot of sense because it includes a big variety of different products. And unfortunately, the dataset did not allow for estimates for a number, so numbers of items. So this, you should also take into account that these different product types, they weigh differently, obviously. And then we looked into the different environmental impact for different products. And to analyze this, you can look at it from different kind of angles. So you can look at the CO2 equivalent per item or per gram. And the graph shows here per gram, where menswear, and I'm sorry that this graph is not in English, but the menswear has the highest CO2 impact per product, per gram. Sorry, per gram. Followed by female items, vocational wear, I would guess you translate to, and then children's clothing. You can also look at the use phase, and here we have found from literature that clothes that are close to your body, such as underwear or tops or tights, they are washed way more often, which contributes to the environmental impact during the use phase, and women tend to wash more often than men. Looking at the last phase of reuse, women's clothing are found more often in secondhand than men's clothing. And the product categories that are sold the most as reuse are skirts and dresses, followed by jackets, tops, shirts, and trousers. And undergarments are quite naturally the least found in secondhand shops. So, like this kind of shows that there's so many different ways of assessing the environmental impact per product, making it really hard to draw the line of whether or not you should use the product type in an EPR scheme. So for example, like although underwear is one of the more resource intensives in the use phase because it's washed every day, these are also the items that are mostly used up and only thrown out when they're actually not functional anymore. And although women tend to buy more, it is the men's garments that are most impactful per gram. And on the other side, women tend to donate more to secondhand, but women are also less likely to use up their clothes. So there is no really clear findings allowing us to differentiate environmental impact per product type. We also looked at the different fiber composition, and as we've now seen several really, really good presentations going way more in detail of fiber composition, I can just say that this is what the text registry says. And this is a very, very rough estimate because the text registry only allows producers to choose either one or the other, as in fiber. So either it's cotton or synthetics. So it disregards all the blends. And you kind of only have those two options. So you have cotton, synthetics, plastics, or leather, or wool and animal hair. But it's not possible to register any other kind of fibers. So it's a very rough one. We also then looked at the environmental impact of fibers. So on the top one, you can see what was available or what was categorized as in the text register, and at the bottom, some other fiber types, which we wanted to look into as potentially an EPR scheme should include these. I'm not going to go through them, but the most important thing to take out is that all different fiber types have both pros and cons. So for instance, cotton has a quite high CO2 equivalent per kilo. It's very water intensive, but it is a renewable source and it's a natural fiber. compared to synthetics, which has less CO2 equivalent per kilo, of course, depending a little bit on how you calculate these things, but comes with a lot of microfiber and does not have that much of a water intensive, but is on the other hand petroleum based. So there's really pros and cons in all of these. And also there is a large variety in terms of production methods. So one fiber can be quite good when produced in a certain way and less in another. Lastly, from the material flow, we found that the export of used clothes mostly goes to Africa, mainly Ghana and Kenya, and secondary to Asia. We do not know the share of Norwegian items in this, but you might have seen the story from Aftonbladet, which shows that also Swedish items do end up in these locations. So there is a big chance that this also counts for Norwegians, but this is unsure. And this is a very complex value chain, and it does show that a lot of the waste happens outside of our borders. So based on this, we made some suggestions for an EPR for textiles. And although some definitions of EPR focus on solely the coverage of waste handling, so the polluter pays principle, paying for the appropriate waste handling, we wanted to look both upstream and downstream, and borrow the definition from OECD, which says the purpose is to create an economy for collection, sorting, reuse, and recycling, and incentives for producers to produce products in accordance with the principle of circularity. So our suggestions are that they cover all textiles, including those items that might contain textiles, that it should be mandatory for all companies. This is a value chain where there's very many different companies putting textiles on the market. And if you don't include everyone, there is a big chance of losing out on a lot of coverage. There is a need for an improved control with online sales and imports, and it should be based on units, not tons, because of the differences in weight from different fibers. However, this is difficult as of now. We're looking both upstreams and downstream, and as have been said by others, and especially Ingrid Klepp has been very vocal about this, the production is by far the largest contributor of clothing's environmental impact. So despite the different fibers, it's the growth, is the production and the consumption that needs to be reduced in order to have a more environmentally friendly textiles consumption. So based on this, we concluded that the most important impact of an EPR scheme is to make it more expensive to put new products on the market. And also that it should provide a financial incentive to improve design, to extend use, and focus on quality. That said, we also did make some suggestions in terms of fibers to prioritize in an eco-modulation, and the overarching recommendations is that it should count as positive when there is a variation of fibers. A big problem of the textile industry is that it focuses on mostly petroleum-based synthetics and cotton, and there is a need for more variety. The fibers should be from ecological and regenerative agriculture to ensure better soil health, and they could be cellulose-based, but that is depending on the production process. Also, recycled fiber and recyclable fibers should be prioritized. We also look downstream, so how an EPR should cover downstreams, and what is really crucial is that it covers the cost of an actual circular material management. So if you look at a waste management defined as simply collection and incineration, that is really cheap. However, separate collection, sorting, reuse and preparation for reuse, and recycling, high quality recycling, that is expensive. So in Denmark, they made an analysis and they found a difference to be between 456 Danish kroners per ton versus 3,000 Danish kroner per ton. So it's important that a fee in an EPR is set high enough to actually cover a good handling. It should also be extended across borders. There's a lot of the consequences happening outside of our of Norway, and the EPR should take this into account. And it should include reuse. So even though donations of secondhand are not defined as waste, the important work of charities should also be included, as reuse is part of the waste hierarchy. And charities are expected to receive less than when separate collection is introduced. Lastly, some final reflections. An EPR might not solve all the issues, so it is also important to know that there's many different ways of tackling the environmental impact of textiles, and the EPR should really cover the waste handling, but a good one, but might not solve everything. And it needs to be executed in collaboration with other Nordic countries and the EU so that it is harmonized and can be better controlled. The eco-modulation requires a quite detailed register, and I think it was very interesting to see all the work being done on care labels, etc. Because these are definitely informations that would be needed for a more fair and accurate calculation of the fees. And there's a lot of interesting suggestions being presented at the moment, such as a targeted producer responsibility already mentioned, and the EPR needs to be designed in line with the other directives and changes coming from the EU and locally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina. You did very well within the time frame, actually, because we have 10 minutes left for discussions and questions. So anyone that wants to raise their hands or write in the chat, you might do so. And Ingunn, maybe you will come up and we can share this together. So anyone, any reflections, discussions, agreements, disagreements, or questions to the speakers or to
Is it
Ingunn?
also questions from?
Yeah, there is also, if anyone in the chat, we will get noticed. What do you think of what we have heard? Any reflections?
Mine? Yes, I have one reflection, and that is that a striking thing is the amount of usable clothes also in the waste, and the little differences between clothes donated and clothes that are discarded. And I think that what we have to do now is actually to start to talk about the definition of waste on textiles, because we talk about, the donations, it's not waste, but then it is so little difference. And I think that we have a problem with the definition, because something in for reuse has not been used. So it is actually reuse clothes that are first time used. And then we have a lot of things that haven't been used but don't have reuse value, as many talked about. So actually I think that our problem is that the definition of waste doesn't apply to textiles, and that we have to loosen up our thinking about this. And that is difficult because the collectors, they want not to be called waste handlers. They are, working with gifts. But to make a change, we actually have to have a better definition. So I think that is something we have to work with now. Yeah. So that is one reflection. It's not a question, but I think it is a difficult one because this is, legal. It is so many different aspects of the definition.
We have one question in the chat, and then Frode, can you read it? It's on the screen. Marte Ultveitmo, did he say the average person of Svalbard throws away approximately 100 kilos per year? That is a quarter of the amount of waste per person in mainland Norway. Residual waste, 100 kilo residual waste, then comes all the other recycled waste in addition. Question from Frode.
I think we follow up from Ingunn's reflection. And I totally agree that we are in a situation now that we have to define what is textile waste and what is not waste. But we have been working also with a project testing out different ways to collect. And the people at home, they cannot do this definition. So I think this is one of the main. Also, I was also there last week or 2 weeks ago and presented the producer responsibility team from the working group, and they said so clearly the textile waste on the one side and reuse on the other side. And that will not work because we have to make a system that can work for the people that should deliver the discarded and reused textiles. So I totally agree with you that this is something we should speak more about. And another thing from today is the accuracy of the label. I was really shocked when we saw how low accuracy there was on the labels. So accuracy. So that is really, I was a little bit on how about our study? Can some of the results, are they viable? Or so that is for sure something we should dive more into. What's the mean with the accuracy is not good? What is that consequence of that?
I think we have one more question. And also, I think the different studies, there were some similarities. So I mean, like the reusability or the reuse potential was almost the same. Was it much more than 60%? Was also interesting. Do we have another question? No, there are nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Then I have a comment to the Svalbard example. I think, first of all, it was to listen to you was very interesting, and I think it points to a direction that we might use these specific cases to learn more. I mean, that looking at Svalbard makes it possible to understand something we can't understand when we are looking at the other areas, because it is like a special case. And I think that is a way to go forward, to look at these specific things. And I know Anna, the PhD student, is working with, among other things, this with moving and how that affect waste production, if you want to call it that. And I think we can learn more from looking into specific cases that aren't, like the others. So I thought your study was very interesting to hear about, and I think we could learn even more if we had more detailed information about the textiles from that area. So I hope we will have more of it, really.
The temperature at Svalbard requires more clothing. Could be. You want to have a comment, Henrik?
That was actually more. Thank you for the comment. This was actually more to the suggestion to look on the definition of waste, because I think historically the Norwegian authorities have been reluctant to put textiles for reuse into the waste definition, because they are afraid that the charity organizations will be, so to say, that they will not be able to do as they do, and they are, of course, also very good at speaking for their own interests. But I think since that, the municipalities have developed these kind of samtykke, as we call it in Norwegian, the right to do collection, because if you do textiles for reuse, like to be defined as waste, then the municipality, you are not allowed to collect without the permission from the municipality. But now these things are into a system. So I think that's a really way to go. And if we don't do so, then we have a lot of more instruments to control the exports than you have if it's products, and that's a good issue.
Yeah.
And this with the export is something we haven't talked about much in detail today, but I mean this we have to take a bigger responsibility for the global waste, and now with restrictions on export of waste, the problem is with textile is that it is not defined as waste and it's not defined as plastic, so it's like slipping out of the regulation through two different So I think this is really important to work with.
And regarding the question of charities, I know that now UF is with us here, and Fretex might be following, and I know that Fretex has expressed they were quite happy about the revision, or the proposed revision of the Waste Framework Directive, because it was specifically mentioned also in the strategy that charities, EU wants to preserve that they can thrive and develop, and also they have a lot of competence on reuse, and we should support that. So I think we are that is possible to do, but in maybe other means, other measures than not going into the discussion of what is waste and what is what waste. There can be other ways to preserve that, the charities, sort of. Okay, any other questions before we go into landing? No? Then I think on behalf of Wasted Textiles project, I will say thank you all for coming and joining, and the presentations will be presented and you can watch the stream afterwards. So thank you very much. Goodbye.